Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Theatre Pitch podcast. My name is Jem. This is an over-excitable Sean.
Hello.
And this is the very usual
Hi,
Joe.
and this is my standard energy level.
And welcome to the Theatre Pitch podcast, the podcast where we all take a random online encyclopedia article and each of us create a pitch of how we would turn it into a theatre show, and we pitch it to each other, and at the end of the episode we smush them together and try and come up with some kind of cohesive show.
Cohesive. When was the last time anything was... Oh, sorry, Gemma.
Yeah,
You were saying?
This is why I say try. Why I say try. But this episode, we will be trying, segue, to... Oh, I've just broken my pen. Whoops.
Great segue to
we will be trying
talk.
to...
I tell you what, dynamite start to the episode, Jem. Like,
I was on such a roll, and then I started fidgeting, and I've just broken my pen. But that's all right. Joe, what's the article for this week?
this week's article is Zimbabwe women's national field hockey team at the 1980 Summer Olympics. The 1980 Zimbabwe women's national field hockey team won the gold medal in women's field hockey at the Summer Olympics that year in Moscow, the capital of the Soviet Union. The squad of 16 women, all from Zimbabwe's white minority, was assembled less than a month before the Olympics, began to help fill the gaps the American-led boycott created in the women's hockey competition. One at a time of great political transition in Zimbabwe, the gold was the country's first medal of any colour, and it was also in the first Olympic Games to feature women's field hockey.
Yep. So, how did you guys find this article?
It depends. Can I go first?
To pitch?
I've got to be honest. I've taken the easy route this week, so I want to get in there before you two take that.
I struggled to not make it political and to not make it... I genuinely was like, no, I want to pitch a fun show. So I've got about 5 non-fun shows, but I have come up with a fun show. Or it's something that I think's quite fun. Sean, how did you find it? Are you having a sugar crash? Is that what's happening?
For anyone who wasn't here before the podcast, which is everyone apart from the 3 of us. But yeah.
Oh, there's the internet back.
That was a great time, Sean. But yeah, for anyone who wasn't here before this, Sean had an unbranded milkshake drink. And he may or may not get some kind of sugar crash during this episode, so keep an eye out for that.
Hang on. So while my internet was down, have you just been like shaming me while I've not been around?
Yeah, we thought you might just hit a sugar low.
It did freeze you on our screens. It did freeze you on our screens with an amazing, like, sugar high smile, crazy smile at us.
That's me. I was trying to be really professional then, and like keeping my recording because it's offline. Like so it looked like I was listening to what you and Joe were saying, but then I come back and you guys, Joe, just like, oh, Sean's a child. He's been drinking too much milkshake. He's gonna completely ruin the podcast, but keep an eye out for it. I tried to be professional. Right, I did all right. I think it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot more difficult for me this week, and I'll tell you why when it's my turn. But yeah, it weren't as plain sailing as I make it look like each week for this week. Sorry, I can't be brilliant every week.
Well, I'm feeling generous. I'm feeling kind, and before the evil voices take over and make me not let Joe go first. Joe, do you want to pitch?
Thank you. My pitch this week, really, for anyone who has seen this online encyclopedia article, because I'm sure we've got fans who wait to hear what we're doing and then they immediately use some kind of online search engine to find this article. And if you did, you'll see that obviously this article has a great deal of detail about how the women's team winning the gold at that Olympics was a big kind of fairy tale type thing in terms of like the Cinderella story narrative of this was a team no one expected to win, who admittedly came through partially by the advantage of this being at the same time as the previously covered American boycott of the Moscow Games. And they took advantage of this and managed to sail through with a clean sweep of 3 wins, 2 losses within their round robin bracket. And the thing is, I think it's fantastic what they did. I think it's quite remarkable that they came through having, I believe if you read the article, travelled in on, what did it say? Yeah, they travelled in on a meat freight aircraft. So they were transported legitimately like cattle to this Olympic Games and then brought back as heroes. And there is the opportunity here to basically do kind of your classic sports narrative with things like, you know, you've got all the people and what their actual jobs were when they weren't being hockey players. Even down to like the one who's not recorded, Anthea Stewart, the player coach who at 35 is already towards the upper end of when you usually are playing your sport. But what I want to focus on is more a narrative about when they've won the Olympic Games. And there was a segment here where it says they were greeted home by huge crowds upon their return and were briefly national celebrities. And every player was apparently promised, if they won, an ox each by Robert Mugabe. And instead, his wife Sally greeted them each with a polystyrene box with some meat in it. And I think there is a certain indignance to this idea that you've flown from Zimbabwe all the way to Moscow. You have flown under these terrible conditions. The eyes of the world have been on you. You are national heroes. And yet you come back being promised an ox, and what you are given is essentially a few chops. And I want to make the entire play essentially an exploration of how this must feel, of the crushing realization of kind of like how brief national hero status can be in terms of what it provides to you. And how within the few years after this happening, apparently the majority of the players in question would emigrate to South Africa and the surrounding area. And I think there's just something of a story in less the triumph of their defeat, but more just this slow crushing fall afterwards, where their essential use as political pawns almost in being this hero narrative is just kind of, as soon as they are used up, they are just kind of tossed to the side. And it would be another 24 years before anyone else actually wins an Olympic medal for Zimbabwe. So I thought the coda was quite fun in terms of we see them saying that they are the Golden Girls, this team. And then in 2004, when the next medal is won, the person who wins it is called the Golden Girl, still by Robert Mugabe, who's still in power at this point. And how essentially these people's hero narratives are just tossed aside, but whereas the man in power, who, as we've seen, was not great, just is always there.
Okay, so what kind of show is it? Is it a?
It's a standard play.
It's a standard play. How many hands in the play? What's the cast like?
We've got at least the central cast playing the actual football team, but you know what? We could
hockey team,
yeah, it's the same thing. But you know what? We could trim that down by a few players. We don't need to focus on all of them. So I'm going to say like 10 to 15 in the cast.
Okay.
There will, as always, be some multi-rolling.
Yeah, and are you thinking end on?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
bog standard fourth wall.
There'll be some kind of like delivering of kind of soliloquies and monologue, but we're going to maintain the idea that the audience is not involved. It's a play.
Okay.
They're not in the team.
Yeah. Sorry.
They're not on the subs bench.
Yeah.
So that's his story, Jem. He's doing a play based on that narrative.
Yeah, and the political landscape of that narrative. Yeah. I like the way Joe was just like, I want to go first because I think I've got an idea that
and then I decided, actually, no, I want to do this.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Do you know what, Joe? I completely agree with you. There's a good story in this, and I've gone something similar where I'm focusing on the narrative instead of what it looks like, which is pretty big for me. And I agree. There's lots of aspects of this team's story that's really interesting, and I didn't even think about the Ox, and and like Mugabe being in power and that. Now I'm thinking about it. Do you reckon some of them were a bit like, oh, thank God, where was I going to put the Ox? Because it's not like it's a dog. It's not like you can pop it back in the back garden. The bloody Ox.
Yeah. I mean, it should be said, we don't have proof that it was just like a Tupperware box filled with meat. It might have been a whole ox's worth of dead animal. But I highly doubt it. And for the sake of this narrative, it's not.
It's a good barbecue.
Yeah, like, it's
a never-ending barbecue.
Yeah, but in this instance, what they're provided with is essentially a barbecue pack to feed 4 if you're not that hungry. And if you're wondering, Sean, where the theatre is for this week, well, I also, while doing this, decided to Google, in terms of foreign students in the UK, where the majority of Zimbabwean students choose to go. And the first thing that came up on Google was Portsmouth. So we're going to do it at the Portsmouth Theatre Royal. Just because I think they'd...
Going Portsmouth.
It's not where I would have put my money. I would never have thought Portsmouth.
Second was Bristol, if that's any interest to you.
I would have gone Southampton.
I can't prove that any of these are where the actual most students are. This is just the first university that came up on the Google kind of... I said the name. On the online search engine.
Fair enough. Okay, cool. Well, that's Joe's pitch. Sean, do you want to go next?
I do want to go next. Okay, so my idea is very similar to Joe's idea, where I'm focusing on an aspect of the story. So normally, unlike you guys, I normally go for like the visual aspect of like a performance. That's normally what I grasp onto. So for this week, I was really trying to find it. I was like, okay, so I'm gonna watch. I went and watched a field hockey game on YouTube. And I looked at it and I was like, well, there's nothing special about this. They've got some sticks and a small goal. Like, there's nothing, what was I thinking? There's nothing that makes you look at it and you go, oh, well, that's field hockey. There's nothing unique about it. No offense to field hockey people. Like, the pitch looks similar to a football pitch. You've got the goals on either end. You've got the referee. You've got the positions. So I binned that off. I had another read, and the bit of the story, the thing I'm going to focus on is two things. Is team dynamic, which I think is really, really important in any team. And I think the team dynamic in this team would be really interesting because they were essentially put together in like a fortnight and was like, you guys are a team now. Bugger off to the Olympic Games, which I think would be really interesting because I've played in many teams, and even though everyone's a team, in every team there's cliques.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah.
You've always. I remember when we was at uni and we were always we'd walk to we'd meet at one place and then walk to the football pitch. And you'd always see, it was about a 10-minute walk, and you'd always see everyone walking there. As you got further along, everyone just went into their little cliques, or you had like the ones that got in the cars with their mates. You did, even though we were a good team, everyone had their own cliques, and you was all chatting. So like mine was like, I was really good pals with the centre forward. So whenever we were playing the game, I was always more likely to just long ball it to him. Not because I was like, oh, I'm not passing it to him. It's more like, where's Sam? I'm gonna get it to Sam. And then great goal scorer, great left foot, just saying. So where was I? Yeah, so I'm focusing on team dynamics, and I'm also focusing on within the team dynamics as well. There must have been like a grey cloud over these players, because none of them qualified for this tournament. None of them were, like, as far as they know, they were there to lose. They were there to, you know, make up the numbers. They were there just so, like, there was another game. So some players must have felt like, oh, I'm really lucky. I'm going to the Olympics. I've got this chance. But other players must have just felt like, oh, what's the point? What's the point of going? So my play is it's set in the airport of them waiting to get onto this really crappy flight all the way to Russia. So that's where it's set. It's just set in this. I'm guessing. What are they called? Airport terminals. Yeah. So they're just in this airport terminal, and they're just sitting around, and it starts with all of them, like, with their hand luggage going, and then you see early on, like, the cliques form. So you could have like I'm guessing the positions are called similar in field hockey than it is in football. You've got like the defenders, and say like the captain and vice captain go off on their own, and they're with the manager. And then you've got like the forwards might be on their own, because the forwards are normally a bit more selfish, which, you know, more about themselves, which they're meant to be. So you instantly see them dynamics as they all go and sit in, you know, in this empty terminal. So they've got a lot of space, and it's how this team interact with one another before this flight, and any conflict, like, they don't know they're about to go and win the gold medal. No one does. They're not. They shouldn't even. It shouldn't even be in their heads that they're going to win the gold medal. But then it also should be, because they're going to the Olympic Games. Anything can happen. These are essentially, you know, they're elite athletes going to the Olympic Games, so they should have that. They should have that mentality. But then also they shouldn't, because they're there to make the numbers, and that's the real conflict within this story, and it's how that conflict then interacts with the cliques within the team, and then how that, because you could easily have like one clique thinking, what's the point of us going? One like, oh, have a better attitude, we can do this. You know, you could have like some people reference some of their practice games, like maybe the striker didn't pass when he should have passed, well, when she should have passed, and that comes up, and you've got the manager as well trying to manage this, because it must be a really horrible situation for the manager, because again, it's like, you in the back of your head, it's got to be like, well, we're there to make the numbers, and we're not going to win. But you can't say that. You've got to be positive. You've got to be like, we're getting on this crappy plane, and it's not going to be for nothing. We're going, and you can have like a really inspiring speech at the end. So that's my play. I'm focusing on. I'm a bit like different to Joe's. I'm focusing on getting on the plane, where Joe's is focusing getting off the plane on the other end of the tournament. You could have one bit where some of them are discussing, like, where am I going to put an ox? I ain't got room for an ox. They don't know that it's not a real ox, and that's my that's to me would be a really good show, because I always like when I watch behind the scenes stuff of sports teams. So there's a few on Amazon. There's one on There's a really good one on Man City. There was one ages ago about Liverpool, which is just hilarious. Hilariously bad. And there's one about motorsport at the minute on Netflix, which I think is the most interesting one. Because, like I said, like there's like cliques within teams and how they interact. Like that's such a good one for seeing how politics within the drivers and the head mechanics goes, but and how that conflicts and how some teams are chummy with other teams and how they're going against other teams. Like for instance, how like half of the grid just all ganged up on one team last season. There's just, you could have like that conflict. That's real conflict that you could sort of have in this show, where it is that. Yeah, does that make sense?
I like it.
Is that interesting?
Yeah, I really like it.
I like how
it.
we've essentially, as you say, kind of both of us talked about this event while completely actually skirting around the actual tournament itself.
Yeah. Hey Gemma, if your show is about them at the Olympics, we are set for the smush. I can't. We will never be more set up for it.
Well, I can tell you now. Every now and then, the three of us actually work as a team and actually work as a company, because mine is very much set at the tournament.
Guys, listeners, this is going to be the greatest smush you've ever seen. It's never going to be, why don't we do that idea, but then we somehow get the other two in? It's going to be, we're going to do it. It's going to be a straight line.
I think it's going to be Sean's show, my show, Joe's show. Let's it.
Hope.
Right, so my show, I really wanted to stay away from the politics. I really wanted to stay away from all of these other ideas that got me fired up with the show, because I was determined to do a fun show. And so I've made the show that I really want to see. Because one of the things that I really wanted to hone in on is I was a field hockey player. And when I was younger, I was playing for my county. And my coach was somebody who played on the field hockey Olympic team for Britain. So I very much was like, this is a great fun time. And the thing that I wanted to capture is this story is amazing. And one of the things that I really got really into the article with is when they started describing exactly how the points were scored, because I could physically, I could in my mind put myself in those shoes, and it was describing how one of the key goals that won the game for this team was a near impossible shot. It was something that ricocheted off of an opponent's stick into the net. And I remembered all of the times where I'd won games that way, where there's such a thrill when you are running for a ball that everybody else thinks is going to go out, but you are so bloody determined to catch that ball that you do, and you score the goal off of you catching that ball just because nobody else was prepared for that to happen. And it really made me miss playing field hockey. It really, really did. And so I really wanted to capture that excitement, not only the excitement of chasing that ball that everybody can clearly see, you can see that they don't think this ball's going to be able to make it into the goal, but then also that thrill of standing on a pitch mid-game whilst the ball's the other side of the pitch and being so electrified and present in the moment, in trying to figure out where's the best place for you to position yourself, and really empathizing with the actual playing of the sport. But then I thought, how in hell do I make that a theatre show? So, my show is this. It is immersive because I'm Jem, and every time I don't know what to do, I make an immersive show. So, the audience all start in different places. The audience is divided up, so you've got your big group, and it's divided up, and each ticket holder is given, or at least each small group of ticket holders is given a different location. And those locations are essentially with the players from the team. and you either find yourself starting the performance at an office block or at a pub, or these everyday locations that these, you know, the Zimbabwean team, they were secretaries, they were accountants, they were housewives. So they weren't seasoned athletes, but the audience go and meet these people in their space. Then, whilst they're there, they get the phone call of, come be on the team. And that moment of reacting where the husband turns around and goes, honey, housewifey honey, what was that on the phone? And she turns around and goes, well, I've just been asked to be an Olympian. That's weird. And these kind of conversations where you...
Best scene ever. Husband's patronising the wife. Wife puts the phone down. I'm going to the Olympics, dickhead.
Exactly. You can have so much fun with these dynamics and this idea of you're kind of being called somewhat out of the blue. And so then as an audience members, you move all to congregate in one central space, and that is the changing rooms, and the locker rooms just before the match. So you are there as this big audience with the team, and it's an immersive scene, and it's that looking, and this is where I think your concept could come in, but it's that idea of you're sitting there and you're playing strategy. You're doing what you do in a locker game in a locker room, which is play strategy, but you're aware that you don't know how all of these people play. I've played matches where I don't know my team, and if you're good enough at the sport, you can very quickly pick up on who is what kind of player. Is your defense an attacking, aggressive defense, or is it a passive defense? And how does your attacker work? And who's good with sweeping, who's good at what, and who's not good at what. But it's still that thing of you're learning as you're playing. So you can that thing that Sean was talking about, where you're looking for the person to send the ball to. If you don't know your players, I've been in that situation where you go, there's 3 people I could send it to right now. I don't know who's best to send it to. So my personal strategy is destroyed. So scene in the locker room, trying to do, really exploring that dynamic and that conflict of, we know how to play the game, but we don't know how to play the game with each other. But we're going to go play the game, but it's not just a Sunday afternoon field hockey match. It's the goddamn Olympics. And you're out flown to Moscow, of all places. And then, after this scene happens, the audience then move into another space where they are put into VR headsets. War of the Worlds in London did this, and they did it incredibly well, where it was one of those, you log into the game, basically. And it's less of an interactive VR thing, because I don't really want people running around and smacking into each other. But it's a 360-degree experience with this headset, so it's fully immersive, and you as an audience member are put into the position of whomever the team member is that you started the show with. You now see the game through that team member's eyes. And you play the game in this 360 virtual experience through that team member's eyes. So you get to feel the thrill of running for that ball. You get to feel the thrill of sweeping. You get to feel that electricity of actually being in the game. And I want to recreate, we've got details of how this match went down. I want to recreate that. So they play the game, and it's all about getting really technical in how we produce that. And then headset comes off, and they leave the space. And then I kind of didn't know how to finish it, but Joe's show does. So yeah, that's my show. Is a kind of it's that 360 experience, but also immersive, and getting to know the players and really being able to put yourself in those shoes of going, this is a very weird situation to be in, but also, when you have a love of the game, you'll go and play it for your country.
So, Is this our easiest ever smush?
No,
I think I just smushed it.
No,
Oh,
I don't like Gemma's show for one reason, and it's one thing why when we do this, I really don't like sports stuff coming up, because
Go on.
I don't think you can. You were saying I want to recreate the feeling of the match. I don't think you can do that with sport. When who's the ginger fella from Happy Days?
What, Ron Howard?
Ron Howard. When Ron Howard made Rush, he said something on the lines of, "You can't recreate that excitement of like live sport. You can't recreate that feeling. So you have to do something different with it." So I always I remember when, which is why when he made that film, it's not about the Formula One. It's about the relationship of the two drivers, and I always think, like, it's true. Like, no matter how many documentaries like I watch about football, that feeling of certain matches, watching it live, there's no better feeling of like Liverpool being 4-0 down against Barcelona and yet pulling it back to get through to the final, or Liverpool being 3-0 down against AC Milan and winning that final. That's why with this one, it's got nothing to do with the actual games for what. So I don't think yours would work that well, Jem. I don't think that bit.
If I can just point a few things out here, Sean. For one, if you're saying that cinema and theatre can't capture the sheer electricity of sport, explain the Goal trilogy.
Do you want me to explain the Goal trilogy?
Fundamentally, there is the difference here, which is, as previously stated, that was to do with film. Whereas I think I can see how, theoretically, you possibly could find a way to combine the electricity of live theatre with that of sport. But the problem is, that kind of feeling of, to use a phrase that's, sorry to drift off into for a second to the world of wrestling, the phrase predetermined, which is a way of people, when people say wrestling's fake, wrestling fans will often respond saying, no, it's not, it's predetermined. And it's like, that is ultimately it, is if you know what the outcome is, the sport itself is less exciting. Fun, potentially.
But I think, one of the things that I get it. You can't if you're just playing the game without actually physically running and getting those endorphins, it'll be hard to relate to it. But one of the things that I don't think I ever played a game where there wasn't a story being told. You have those moments where you interact with one other team member, you shout and you get shouted at, and there's a story that unfolds on the match, which if you don't play a game, if you don't play that game, you probably wouldn't be aware of how much communication goes on the pitch and how many stories unfold. And one of my favorite things after a match, for days after a match, is we would talk about, remember that time where I swept the ball over to you and it ricocheted off of this, but then Nikki caught it. And it's these moments that are astonishing that I think if you apply, because saying recreate the game entirely can be quite boring, if only because that's 40 minutes or however long the game is of running around getting exhausted. But if you take the approach that cinema takes, which is you capture the moments of amazing, you capture those moments of relationship, you capture those moments of story on the pitch. So it's a choreographed thing, but it's still achieving the end result, and that predetermined nature of saying, you know, that ball has to go into the top right hand corner of that net in this way, because that's what it's recorded to have been to have done. So I think that's the thing that I'd be more interested in, is these moments of running and chasing and getting the ball and looking around and seeing everybody's just given up, rather than just, you can spend most of a game just stood there because your attack is way too good for you sitting on defense, so you're just sat there waiting for the ball and you can't cross this line, right? And that's boring. But if you can choreograph it like a dance, so that you're capturing those moments of story and those moments of relationship and conflict, and especially those moments are filled with more tension, they're filled with more drama when you don't know your players. When you don't know your team members, that's when it starts to get really interesting, because you yourself as an audience member can be sitting there and hearing the player that you're embodying, that person's thoughts, just because you start speaking it out loud. You start sitting there going, why didn't you catch that ball? Who can I send this to? Oh my gosh, kind of thing. So you can be having your own personal performance, but then also seeing that interaction between other people.
Yeah, but also, I think the thing to take from that is that, there is a way to do this, but I don't think it's taking it in its most literal approach. I think you need to do a very kind of representative approach of trying to capture that sort of lightning in a bottle. But I don't think it can be done by taking very much the straightforward approach. I think it's, doing something more lyrical, more kind of like physical theatre-y dance-based, I think would work better than trying to actually recreate hockey. Because I think also, I was going to say, Sean, my side note is, the one type of sports film that really works is baseball, because it's not an exciting game. So you don't have to try and capture excitement that's not there.
I agree. I've just come in, and like we all know my internet went again. And
we know it done goofed.
Yeah, and I caught bits of it, and I agree with Joe. Like, Jem, all of you, all of what you've said is spot on. The story that you're telling is really good, but you need to strip it down and say, well, do I actually need the field pitch? Do I actually need these VR? Don't get me started on VAR. The VR bits. You don't, because you're Joe's spot it right there. Get them key moments and represent them. Can we do that as the smush? We take the key moments of yours and represent them on the stage. Or have you guys already said that? Have I just completely come in and just said
no?
Okay.
No, you're coming in fresh. You're good.
I think there is the opportunity here to do an easy smush in a way of kind of. Is it cheating to do a play with 2 intervals, and just do a kind of condensed version of Sean's, a condensed version of Jem's, and a condensed version of mine with an interval between each of the plays?
It's theatre. We can do whatever we want.
Basically, do like kind of 35 minute plays, then 10-minute interval, 35 minute play, 10-minute interval.
I'd like that.
Yeah?
I really like that. And you 3-act play, all about their journey from being in a meat plane to winning gold to being on a plane and getting some meat at the end.
Yeah.
And everyone can go home with a steak.
There will be a merch stand at the end, but it's just going to be knockoff Zimbabwean hockey kits and boxes of meat.
We can do that.
Are we gonna have a vegan option?
Nope. That's what the that's what the hockey kits are there for.
This is 80s.
There
It weren't big that back then. Vegan ox.
Okay.
We've done it.
I'm happy with that being the smash.
I'm curious, Joe.
Oh yeah.
I think we should go around and try and name good sports films.
Okay.
We keep going until someone.
Sure.
Whoever says one that we don't agree with loses.
Okay.
I'm
gonna have to state here. Don't agree with can't be the same as haven't seen.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, because I'm just stating that one now, and as a result, I'm just going to start with possibly my favourite sports film, which is Eight Men Out. It's a dramatisation of the 1922 fixing of the World Series.
Ooh, look at Joe.
I don't think I've seen that.
No, I haven't seen it either. So I'm really surprised. Should I go next?
Yeah, sure.
Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
Bend it like Beckham.
I'm going to stick with my theme, and I'm going to go for Field of Dreams.
League of Their Own.
Oh, that's again.
She's the Man.
Is She's the Man a
Did you
sports
say She's
film?
the Man? That's not a sports film.
She's the Man is.
Okay.
It has a lot of football in it. And it's Shakespeare. Leave it alone.
Green Street has a lot of football in it, but I wouldn't say that's a football film.
Yeah. All right.
All right then. I've got
We'll
one.
we'll
I've got
allow
one.
it. We'll allow it. I'm gonna carry on with The Longest Yard.
Ooh.
That is a good film.
Isn't there two versions of it? What's
Yeah.
the one in America called?
No, there was a version of The Longest Yard back in like late 70s. Then there was a version in the 2000s.
Mean Machine. That's what it was
yeah,
called.
Mean Machine.
With Vinnie Jones.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I'm having Mean Machine for my next one.
Fair enough. Gem?
It's good.
I'm assuming
Okay,
is this where
I'm now
you
gonna
say
be describing
oh,
films.
because it's also Shakespeare and it's basketball.
Which one?
Oh, have you never seen it?
I know I have. I'm at the point now where my brain's like, I'm not going to give you the title. I'm going to give you something that sounds like the title, but I know it's not the title, but I'll just have to describe the film. Is it Caddyshack or Caddy
No,
or something like
Caddyshack is the
that?
film.
Yeah.
Caddyshack. Okay, cool. I was looking at it going, that sounds
I'm
wrong.
going to go for Shaolin Soccer.
Oh, yeah.
Rocky 4.
Now, I might be thinking, Joe, you're The Longest Mile.
Longest Yard.
Is
Longest
that the
Yard.
film that stars Sandra Bullock as the mum who takes the American football
No,
player?
you're thinking of The Blind Side.
Blindside.
This
I was
is
just
where
like,
the game ends. The
Sideline.
Blind Side's terrible.
The Blind Side's an amazing film.
I'm sorry.
The Blind Side is so
The
touching.
Blind
and
Side
so
is
brilliant.
literally
What a
white
performance.
savior narrative played out in condescending Republican vision.
My
But
next
it
one
made
was
me
going to be
feel
High
things.
School Musical.
My next one was going to be Happy Gilmore. So, you know.
Oh my god.
My next one was
What a
going to be
great
Rush
film.
because
No,
you haven't
is it-
stated it in this.
Hang on, no. Happy
Happy
Gilmore
Gilmore's
is a
about
sports film.
golf.
It's about golf.
Is this?
Oh,
Are we
no,
going to get into
you
the
are
is
right,
golf
you
a
are
sport
right. I'm thinking
discussion now?
I'm thinking of something else.
What was the other one? The one where he plays like there's
Billy Madison.
Billy Madison. Yeah.
I always get them two mixed up because they came out they came
Yeah.
out at a similar time, didn't they?
Yeah.
So Jem lost.
Yeah. Is it back round to me?
But no, we were
Oh.
just. Is it you
Okay.
versus me now?
Oh, I wondered
I
whether
feel- I
were
feel-
we
I
playing
feel-
this elimination rules.
I feel like this has just gone on too long.
I think anybody listening, if you can think of a better sports film, whack it in the comments.
And
and
before
knock
anyone
both
whacks
Sean
it in the
and Joe
comments,
out.
Goon. Just saying it.
Ooh.
What a film.
So if you want,
Well,
if you,
sure.
if I'm trying to segue to the end before my internet drops out
Yeah.
again. I have one thing left to do on this podcast. I need to do it.
Okay. I'm going to go and look for next week's article. Sean?
Yeah, I'll try. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook and YouTube, it's One Foot in the Door Arts. Just Google that and you'll find it. Or, easier for you, just press the link in this description. It's right there underneath. Just click our link tree and you'll see all of our stuff. Yes, Jem, thanks for pointing. Just follow where Jem's pointing and there's a link.
I'm a good
just
assistant.
Press that there and you can follow us. If you want to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, it's still Shawnee B. If you want to follow Gemma, it is
OFITD_Gem, or you can follow my other podcast at Happiness Anonymous Show.
And
I knew my internet
There
was.
you are, you're back.
I knew my internet was gonna go. It was just after I finished, sort of like, "Hey Jem, what's yours?" And then I paused, and I was like, "Well, Joe's not moving at all." And I'm debating now whether I keep this in or not. So,
Well,
Jem, did you do it?
yeah, Jem got to
Yeah,
the
I
end
did
of
it, I
hers.
did
If
it.
you want to segue into asking
No,
me, Sean,
we'll
you
go
can
to-
edit it seamlessly.
We'll leave it. We're leaving this in. The audience need to know that we do. It's all real. There's no.
all
Oh,
socially
we're going
distant.
real inside baseball on this one. Okay.
Oh, hello. Hey, if you want to follow more of Joe's classic, look, just classic stuff. I feel like I've lost it. My internet has really threw me out. Hey, Joe, where can people follow you?
Okay, you can follow me at NotJoeRonchka on Twitter. That's NotJoeRaczka. And you know what? I think I'm just going to set up one of those link trees myself for all the various other podcast things I'm doing. But mostly Boat Club.
Yeah. And Joe, do you want to take it away
What
with
has
what
happened
article
in
we're
this
going to
week,
do?
Joe, where you've just not bothering with the other two?
There's too much. There's 4 others now.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe.
So next week we are going to be looking at Maya. Who is Maya, I hear you asking? Maya was a Pythagorean philosopher, according to the later tradition, one of the daughters of Theano and Pythagoras, and also married to the famous athlete and some would consider the first wrestling champion, Milo of Croton.
Just so long as it doesn't have maths, I'm happy.
Oh, you better believe there'll be maths.
Uh-oh. And it's Pythagoras' theorem. Well, that's next episode. This episode has all been about the field hockey Olympics, magical fairy stories, and Zimbabwean female teams. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye!
And neither of you said cool runnings, which I literally mentioned earlier in the episode.